Hi.
Hello.
Hello. It's so good to see you, darling. Class is in session. I just got a notification of a severe thunderstorm moving into our area. The frontline winds began coming through about 10 minutes ago, and my sister Christine ran all over the property trying to pull down every basket of flowers that she worked so hard to plant because 60, 70 mile an hour winds will take them all down. They're all on shepherd's hooks.
Mhm.
So down they came, in came the car, nice and tight to the house. And naturally, because it's Friday night and I've got 2 hours of shows, this would be the time that the severe thunderstorms decide to move through Georgia.
That's when it happens.
And that's when it happens. So, Jeff, I was hoping that you would be able to join us in Houghton Lake the last weekend, and because of your work schedule, you couldn't. But I just want to take a few minutes to open the show tonight. Class is in session, and I've learned some things myself. I did go to Houghton Lake with Deb and Jamila and Val, and I don't know how many people were there. It was a lot. We had a wonderful healing communal gathering last weekend at the Lakeside Inn, which, I've told all of our viewers about time and again, so they know. But something many, many, many extraordinary things happened that weekend. But one thing happened that I did not expect. I knew a lot of the people that were there, had met them, time and again at different paranormal events and that type of thing. And so I was very comfortable, totally in my environment. And Deb DeRoos walked over to the table and she had a little box, a little flip top box, lovely, and all hand done. And I opened it, and there was a lovely, thoughtful card inside, and a couple of business cards. And she said, "This is from my hairstylist, Dottie." And I had never met Dottie. I don't think I've ever met Dottie. I'm pretty sure I had not. And so I was kind of stunned because Deb had been telling her about me during when she was getting her hair done for the event. And this woman, who has, not only is she an excellent hairstylist, hairdresser, but she's also an unbelievable artist and has her own little business, her own side business. And she put together this whole box of gifts for me just because. Just because. I was just floored. It was so beautiful. And so I wanted to show you one of the things that she made for me. It's hand painted.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful? So I put it under, I've got a cobalt lamp, an antique lamp, and the light comes down from the top because it's got a Victorian, one of those shades that kind of flares out at the bottom. So it sheds the light down into the cup and it lights up the owl. It just lights it up. Isn't it absolutely beautiful? And this and bracelets and I mean, just a whole gift box full of things for me, a stranger to her, nobody that she's ever met. But Deb said, and so I called her to thank her for, she gave me her business cards. I got both of her business, hairdresser, Dottie's gifts. And I called her because I wanted her to know how thoughtful and considerate I found her gift and how lovely, how beautiful, how talented she is, how artistic. And so this morning, since I was so far behind, I didn't even get my voice back until yesterday. I mean, I sounded like a mouse, honest to God, squeak, squeak, squeak. But this morning I said, Bill, I swear to God, I'll get the show set up with you. And so I titled it "The Power of Appreciation." I'll be seeing you. I will be seeing you. When someone extends a gesture of kindness, it is the reciprocal act of appreciation which solidifies a bond between individuals. Thank you, expressed in a heartfelt way, is enough to seal the deal as two people lock eyes. I need my glasses. Lock eyes and embrace. It is very powerful. The frequency is balanced, energy exchanged in a precious moment. If the gratitude is expressed at a distance, it can be equally impactful. A story can overwhelm the mind and open the heart to a cosmic connection. It happened with Dottie. The perfect analogy for a lesson awaits. She lives in the heart of Michigan for a reason. Her goodness requires a big place to hold such a truly kind, divine spirit. So that was the for anybody that didn't click on and see the description of the show, that was it. When I got on the phone with her, Jeff, she was floored that I even called her. I don't know why. It's the only conscientious thing to do. I didn't want to just, send a little thank you note. I wanted to call her and thank her and have a conversation with her. And so I told her how much the owl meant to me and that I have a collection of owls that measures in the hundreds. Because when my Aunt Frankie passed away in 2011, I inherited most of her owl collection. I inherited all of her owl collection, but then I graciously shared it among, my family, whoever fell in love with this or that or the other thing, they got to, take it. But I've got the bulk of them. Between Florida and Georgia, hundreds and hundreds of owls. And I told her, I said, Dottie, I'm pretty sure they're not from this planet. I'm pretty sure they're aliens. They don't make a sound when they fly. And then I told her two little stories. One about the little baby barred owl who was only about that big when I met him. And he was one of the two chicks that Big Daddy and Big Mama had, that I had a whole cluster of owls in Winter Garden when I lived there. And he flew into a tree in the front yard, and it had just begun to rain, and Dad was outside with me in the driveway, and I walked across the front lawn and I went to the bottom of the tree, and he was sitting on a single bare limb. And I looked up at him and I said, I know who you belong to. And you are so, so beautiful. And I thank you for coming here and getting to know me. And I know your mom and I know your dad and I know your uncles and your aunts and, all of them. And you probably remember when I talked about when Hurricane Irma came through and all the owls, like 2:00 in the morning, all the owls got together right across from the lake and they, I mean, it was so loud. They had a full village meeting and then it went silent and they were gone and they didn't come back for 2 weeks. Now, Irma was not supposed to come directly over Winter Garden, but it did. We didn't know it. They did. And so they took off to parts unknown, and then they all came back about 2 weeks later. And then they had these two chicks. And so I named him Moist Owlette because it was raining. And I told him that he was welcome there anytime. And when I said that, I turned and I looked at my father, who had his arms crossed like, this is not happening. And this little owl, well, he's not that little, he was about that big, and he had a wingspan of probably 3 feet already. And he just opened his wings and floated right down to the ground in front of me. And we had a very nice chat. It was just lovely. And I'm listening to my father behind me going, I do not believe this. I do not. That is a wild animal. And I do not believe this is happening. And so he stayed for a little while, and then he went up and he sat on the roof, and then mom and dad showed up, his parents, and then his sibling showed up. And it was a lovely encounter. And so I told her about that. And I told her about what happened during Hurricane Irma and how they all left, and then they came right back home 2 weeks later, because we'd had 3 tornadoes go right around us, and there were dozens and dozens of trees down. And it took a good 2 weeks to clean up the neighborhood so that people could come and go. I'm sure birds' nests were destroyed, no question about it. We had 111-mile-an-hour sustained wind for 6 hours. So it was a nightmare. But I told her about that, and I told her about my very special connection with owls. And she got really choked up, and she said, I didn't know really anything about you, but I listened to my intuition, and my intuition told me to paint an owl for you. And so that's how I got to know Dottie. And she is so lovely, and I'm so looking forward to meeting her. And maybe she can do something with my, like completely out of control hair when I go back. But we made a connection, Jeff. We made a connection with each other that was so touching. We talked for at least a half an hour. We just went on and on with each other about my stuff, her stuff, and even long distance with a stranger, we can make profound connections. And a thoughtful, considerate, kind gesture that she made was the bud of a blooming friendship. It was like the bud of, peonies, how they have these big fat tight buds, and then they open and they're just resplendent with color and fragrance, and just make a yard look like a magical garden. And so I wanted to talk about that tonight, and about how we are able to, if we pay attention, if we just pay attention to each other and acknowledge the little kindnesses that we do for each other, that seals the bond. That's what creates it. It's not just the giving of the gift, it is the accepting of the gift, and with what grace we do that. I think that's the most important thing. I have had, and I don't know about you, but I have had situations in the course of my life where I've tried to do something for someone and they didn't feel worthy. That individual that I was trying to help or trying to do something for didn't feel worthy in themselves, and denied me the pleasure of helping them, until I reminded, and it's happened several times over my life, till I reminded them that by refusing to accept my gesture of kindness, not only are they robbing themselves of the gesture of kindness, but they're robbing me of the privilege of extending it and having it accepted.
Yeah.
And so it's got to go both ways. It can't just be lopsided, not one side or the other. I had somebody send me a gift one time recently within the last year that there was no note inside. There was nothing inside. It was a beautiful gift box, and I had no idea who it came from. So I figured it had to be somebody that had my address, because I had changed my address from Florida to Georgia. And so I started going through my phone and looking one name after another. Did you send me a box? Did you send me a box? It took about 30 or 40 messages before I found who had done it. And then it happened recently again. My friend Sabrina sent me 24 magnificent roses, but there was no name on the box. So I didn't know. And so I sat very quietly and I kind of put out in mind, okay, whoever sent me these roses, call me now or send me a message. Let me know that they came from you. And honest to God, within 5 minutes, I got a text message from her. It says they delivered the roses. You got them? Don't leave them out in the carport, or, something like that. And so it was kind of a telepathic exchange that happened, which I find happening more and more and more in my life. But to have met Dottie this way through this magnificent owl, to have made a new friend who put time and energy and effort and talent into this beautiful thing for me that I will keep for the rest of my life, means so much to me. So much to me. And you are a gift in my life. You are a gift in my life. You bring joy into my world. Every time I get a message from you, my heart leaps. It just does. Because I know that we will have, as soon as we can, have this time together. So sometimes it's the simplest things.
Yeah.
The simplest engagements with people, just opening a door for someone, smiling at them, telling them they look lovely, just being kind, just being sweet. Oh, Jonathan, oh God, I'm going to have to kiss him and hug him and squeeze him. I just, a lot of times, Jeff, we get really deep into our conversations. And this might seem simple. It might seem, not that big a thing, but it was huge to me. And it meant so much to me.
Yeah.
And so I have told my story. I had told my owl stories 1,000 times. I don't know how many podcasts or, different things that I've done. So many owl stories that I've got from across my life. And, but I had never told Dottie. And it was telling her those, like the one that flew over my shoulder and I didn't hear him coming, and the whole tip of his wing, Big Papa, the whole tip of his wing just touched my face as he flew past me. His head was this big. Barred owls get huge in Florida. His wingspan had to be 4 or 5 feet. I never heard him coming, but he knew I was there and he touched me.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt when I got this beautiful hand-painted glass from Dottie. I felt touched by something divine.
Yeah.
So now you talk while I drink water, because I'm losing my voice again already.
Well, I mean, number one, I want to say that I want to agree with Jonathan that you are a gift to us all as well. You're a gift to me personally. You're a gift to us. You're a gift to the world. And I so appreciate your presence in my life. And we appreciate your presence in our lives so very much. There's a lot of things that came to mind as you were talking, not the least of which is Matthew 10:42, which says, "Anyone who even just gives a cup of cold water to someone in the name of the divine has essentially manifested the kingdom of God, and anyone who gives someone a glass with an owl painted on it has done the same thing."
Same thing.
It is the small gestures, and yeah, small gestures might seem small to those of us who are trained to think of the large in terms of large things, but that's not how large things work.
Mhm.
The big things are the small things, and typically the things that we think are the small things are the big things in reverse. Anyways,
Yeah.
but no, that's so powerful, and it makes me think of a couple of different things. I mean, one, just to kind of get this notion out there and maybe out of the way, but still out there, because I think there's a larger point we probably want to circle back to. But we talk about the problem of evil, and in theology and philosophy, theodicy is the notion of the problem of evil in the world, and how do we deal with the problem of evil, and how do you square the notion of the existence of a loving, benevolent, omnibenevolent, even creator, when we live in a world that is so pockmarked by evil and tyranny and violence and savagery and brutality and what have you. So the problem of evil, and the problem of evil is real, and I've grappled with it and I've wrestled through it with it throughout my life. How can I maintain a belief in a benevolent source, you
That
know,
allows evil.
that
That
allows,
even
yeah.
allows the existence of evil.
Right, yeah, and at the same time, look around and see all this, and still, at the end of the day, it was just 22:22 when I looked at the timer, by the way, so I just thought I'd mention that. Why? How do you square those things? But the more that I think about it, the more that I realize I think there's actually a deeper problem that needs addressing and that needs solving than the problem of evil, and it's the problem of good. Because evil, whether you want, we could philosophize all day about where it comes from, how it comes to be, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it exists. And we've all been touched by it at one time in our lives and in one form or another. We all know it exists. And yet, people who have been touched by darkness, evil, I don't just mean darkness in the sort of, the shadow sense of darkness where
Hmm.
it just seems dark, but no, I'm talking about evil. Bad things, tragic things, terrible things have touched people's lives. And yet I have found the brightest light shines forth from those who have been touched by the deepest darkness.
Hmm.
I have found that to be the case 20 times out of 10. The brightest lights I've ever met are the people who, once you sit down with them and you listen to their stories, you're like, how are you not in an asylum? Or how did you not how are you still on the planet with everything that's happened to you? And not only how are you still here, but how are you still here and shining so brightly? How is it that and that's the problem of goodness, which I think usurps the problem of evil. How can good like that exist in a world that is so clearly filled with evil? And those are the things that take our breath away and that stop us in our tracks, because we're always so conscious of the bad, because the bad is always that which announces its presence with trumpets and banners, and it's the loudest thing going, right? It's the most prominent thing we typically see. And so when in the midst of that, boom, we just see this flaring up of goodness in a small gesture, a cup of cold water in the name of the divine, a gift from a stranger that you don't know, anything like that. Honestly, sometimes, I travel a lot. Sometimes something as simple as when you're on a 4 or 5 lane highway and it's crazy traffic and everyone is just being absolutely bestial towards one another. And, it's going down to 1 lane and some guy just lets you pass. I mean, that sounds so simple. That's just the simplest of human gestures. But in a moment like that, it's just like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just flipped me the bird and honked your horn and zoomed on past the way that everyone else did. But like,
Yeah.
it's those movements like that that really just stop, and you're like, I don't know. It does something to you. And then what does it do? But it keeps the flow of reality moving forward. And so movements and motions like the one Dottie extended your way, those are flarings up, or flarings up of the divine in the midst of darkness that present us with a problem greater than the problem of evil, which is the problem of good. How can goodness like that, how can light like that exist in the presence of such deep darkness? And I think it's because there is a source of which we are all extensions. And it is that source reaching out to us through the icons of those actions that cause us to thirst and long for that source itself. Anyways, but the other thing I would say is so actually, I've been meditating on this poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins. It's a Jesuit priest and poet, one of my favorite poets. He wrote As Kingfishers Catch Fire, which is one of his most famous ones, which I'm sure a lot of people know. But the poem God's Grandeur, it's incredible, absolutely an incredible poem. And in it, he says, the world is charged with the grandeur of God, is how he starts the poem out. And then he starts to wax very eloquent about, yes, the world is charged with the grandeur of God, but yet it's been trampled underfoot by men with their toil and their violence and all this kind of stuff. And then he says the line, and yet for all of this, hold on, let me make sure I get it right. He says, because I have it written down in my journal because I was just thinking about it today. He says, and for all of this, nature is never spent. So regardless of all of the evil he is describing, the first line rings truer than all the evil. And that first line says the world is charged with the grandeur of God. All this evil he describes, then he says, and yet for all of this, nature is never spent. There is always a greater reality that is bursting through all of this darkness and making its presence known. And I've been drawing this image in my journal and in my writings. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes, you sent me a picture of that. Yes.
And this one in particular, I don't know if it can be seen, but I can't stop drawing it. And it's in all my journal entries. It's the image of the serpent eating its tail, the Ouroboros. And so this appears in myths and religions and traditions all over the world. And the head and the tail are connected in all depictions except for those purposely subverting it. And it represents the cyclical nature of life, but the principle of eternal recurrence. It basically represents an endless cycle. But I kept getting, in a lot of even occult streams, it's an image that will strike terror into the heart because it speaks of this cycle of death and rebirth and death and rebirth. And the purpose of ritual magic and other forms of spirituality is to break free from that cycle. And Christianity as well through resurrection. And
also, our tendency to devour ourselves.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That is such incredibly destructive thing to do. It's like it's just self-abuse. It's self-loathing. It's self-contempt.
Yes.
It's not giving ourselves a chance to live because we're busy killing ourselves with self-hatred.
Yeah.
For what? And that's because we don't understand that we are each in our own design a living, breathing embodiment of divine consciousness, God consciousness, Christ consciousness, divine creator. Call it whatever you want. It's all the same thing.
Yep.
And it is so beautiful. And it is the way that what created us sees its own creation.
Yeah.
And so how, in my opinion, and so because we live in duality, because we have that constant conflict of good and evil, darkness and light. So much. I'm looking at you right now, and it's very, very dark in your room. And I see your bright, shining face. And then I see those flickers of flames behind you. And those flames illuminate everything about you. And they are a fraction of the darkness, but it's what my eye goes to immediately to the light. And so many people have asked me what you just said. How could you have gone through what you went through and come out on the other side like you are?
Mm-hmm.
And my response is a very simple one, and a truly a deeply honest one. I have seen the dark side of existence. I have
Mm-hmm.
witnessed it.
Yep.
I have been drawn into it.
Yep.
I have seen the dark side of existence.
Mm-hmm.
I choose to live in the light.
Amen. Yeah.
Nothing dark will come near me
Yep.
because I will defeat it, and it knows that.
Yeah. And light is the greater reality. You do not go, if you go into a dark room and you strike a match, there
Yeah.
is not a battle. There is not a struggle that ensues between
Nope.
darkness and light.
Light wins.
Immediately illumines the darkness. That's just how it works. And it spreads exponentially. 186,000 miles per second. It wins. Light wins, period. And so, but the purpose, that image I just keep drawing, and I know in some traditions it can be seen as a positive thing, just kind of like the natural cycle of things or whatever. But
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
a lot of systems, it's also seen negatively, and that's the context in which I was seeing it. But the context I was seeing it and keep drawing it is the head separated from the tail, which means the ending of the cycle. No more devouring, no more cyclical repetitions of a negative cycle. And then from within it, I just keep seeing this like sunburst coming forth. And that to me symbolizes what Hopkins wrote about, that for all of this, nature is never spent. Why? Because the world is charged with the grandeur of the divine. The greater reality is what this false reality has circled itself around, but that false reality can never stop the greater reality, which will always be bursting forth from within like a dandelion, pushing itself up through the concrete. And that's what these flashes of, it's not even a flash of resilience, it's a flash of reality, um, in the darkness. Simple actions like the one that you experienced from this individual, Dottie, or ones I can recall at different times in my life. Okay, so for example, I remember speaking at a church probably about a decade ago in North Carolina, and when you're an itinerant speaker, like in churches, at least I don't have like a set honorarium amount or anything. I'm like, as long as you get me there, as long as I don't have to go into debt to get to you, whatever you feel to do is 100% fine with me. I have a family, so I got to pay my bills, but just, help me out with that and we're good. I never set an amount, and some people do, and that's totally fine. It's just, I never did. And they took care of me. They were very generous. But the greatest gift I received was at the end of it. Um, a woman probably in her 30s, I would say, came up to me, and she was like in tears, and she was like, I was very moved by what you said. She was like, I don't have anything to give, but it was my birthday, and somebody gave me this, and it was a Red Lobster gift card for $25. She said, somebody gave me this for my birthday, and I don't have anything to give you, but would you please accept this? And the part of me, the softy part of me, which is 100% of me, because there's not really a not
Yeah.
softy part about me, was
Right.
like, wanted to be like, no, that's your birthday present. You don't. But I saw the look in her eyes, and I was like, in this moment, if I deny her the ability to express generosity, and the only way she's able to express it in this moment, I will
Mhm.
stop the divine flow. And so I
That's great.
received it, even though it was difficult for me to receive it. I had to humble myself to receive it, and I also
Gotcha.
had to risk feeling like I did something bad in a way. And I remember another time I was in the Dominican Republic speaking, and then we were doing like a week-long trip there, and we did like a medical mission, and we had doctors and everything that were just, free medical stuff for whosoever will. And it was a beautiful, beautiful trip. And near the end of it, I was speaking on like a Friday night, and really large congregation, maybe 1,000+ people, and really powerful service. And at the end of it, they take up an offering too, and you don't go there to expect a thing. There was no expectation whatsoever. You don't do it for that. That's not even in your mind. We're
It's
there
not
to
what I
totally
do it for. It's not
give.
what you do it for, which
We
is why we do this
Right.
together.
I paid a couple grand to be there. I'm certainly not expecting to get anything, right? But at the end of the service, the pastor of the church, a large church, but in a very impoverished area, so they're not wealthy, he came up and he just said, someone in the congregation wanted to give you this. And it was a American $20 bill. And I just was like, I know we just spent a week, removing sores from people's faces and stitching up open wounds. And like, I know you don't have a lot of, like, I was like, I can't take this. And he said, son, do you have any idea how much this means to them to be able to do this? Do you have any idea what this means to this person? That you symbolize something more to them than just you, who I know you and yourself, you don't feel like, but you symbolize something bigger to them. They were moved. They had the ability to do this and they want to do it. He's like, don't take that from them. And I was like, okay, lesson learned, understood. And it was like in that moment, as you said, I received it. It wasn't just the gift. The gift is part one. The gift is like the seduction into the divine dance. It's the thing
Yeah.
that's wooing you. But the acceptance of it, that's when the circle closed. That's when the circuit is complete. And that is a manifestation, that the act of generosity and the reception of the same, and then the storing of that moment in the heart of the receiver, that
Yes.
they will later then replicate, right? It's generosity, reciprocation, and replication, and then the circle continues. That is the divine manifest physically. And
Mhm.
that is, to me, that is that sunburst emerging from within the Ouroboros circle of endless repetition. That is the thing that separates the head from the tail and reveals what reality actually looks like, because at the bottom of it all, there is a source that exhaled us into existence, that breathed us into being. Whatever you call it by, however you understand it, there is some kind of source that generously gave of that source's self so that we could be who we are. We could be expressions of itself, so that we could be it experiencing itself. It is the generosity of that divine spirit that is the true heart of everything. And so, whatever false reality sort of circles around it and presents itself as ultimate reality always has to give way to that. And actions like that, in the midst of the chaos of the world and everything and all the tumult and everything else we see going on right now, simple flashings forth of the divine like that, I mean, that's God. That's whatever you want to call it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's source.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
When we were children, every year my mother would read the Gift of the Magi to us at Christmas.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, which I hope if anybody out there hasn't read it, it's very short, and it's everything all wrapped up into one lesson, one short story. And the sacrifices that we make for each other
Mhm.
out of an expression of love so pure, a spirit so divine. When you meet somebody that's pure of heart, you can feel it. You can feel that frequency, that vibration that exists between you. You can see it in their eyes. Every time somebody walked up to me this past weekend, it was a hug, a kiss, a long embrace, a dance, a song, a gift exchanged. Every single person. And that was so incredibly healing.
Mm.
So incredibly healing for everyone that was involved, everyone that was there. But being on the phone with Dottie, talking to her about her intuition, for the first time, Dottie had trusted her intuition and painted the owl for me, knowing nothing about my divine connection to the owl. So that when I told her that, it opened up something in her that heretofore had been closed. And she trusted her own intuition for the first time.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
It is.
It's miraculous.
It is. Do you want to know something cool? Like I know I've told this before. I know I've told you before, and I know I've told it on air before, but I don't care, because it's really one of the reasons we're connected.
Yeah. And bears repeating. Yes.
I hope so. um, so I guess it was when the Conjuring movie, the film, first, like it just came out on, DVD or Blu-ray back then. So that had to have been a decade ago, I think, probably about 10 years ago, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I was in the middle of kind of a personal hell at the time. And I had been in that hell for a few years, right? I had some real deep struggles spiritually. Really, I had gone into, um, yeah, other people's hells were probably way worse. But this, as far as relative to my experience, I had been in hell for a while, and I had been really struggling and fighting and scratching and trying to claw my way to the surface, being as faithful as I could in every aspect of life, but still there was a deep, deep soul suffering that I was undergoing. Dark night of the soul. Anyone who's been there
Yep.
knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I had been in the middle of one, really had been in the middle of one, and I had questioned most everything about my faith. And I was I was recovering a lot of those things. I really was starting to make some sense of things, and I really was. But even so, there was still a struggle. So I get home from a meeting. I was doing a conference I was speaking at in Colorado, and in Denver, I think. And I come home, I land, and a friend of mine calls me up and says, "Hey, you want to come over? My wife and I want to make you dinner, and you can watch we can watch the movie The Conjuring." And I was like, "Sure, sounds great." And so, one, you have no idea how much I needed that dinner with these friends of mine. I don't think anybody, and I've told them, you have no idea how much that crock pot chicken meant to me that night in your small, like, two-bedroom apartment. You have no idea how much that meal, that invitation and that meal meant. It meant everything to me. You may as well have given me the vault of Scrooge McDuck himself. Like, that was one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given. And I've tried to express that to them at times, just because I'm often overwhelmed by how much that meant to me to this day. And then we watched the movie The Conjuring, and my heart was cracked open by the gesture of the invitation, because, like I said, I'd been in hell. I was I was suffering. I just don't know how else to explain it. I was suffering, but that act of generosity and kindness on the part of these two people cracked something open in me, and I was like feeling and emoting. And I had just come back from preaching, and I preached passionately, yet there was a hardness here, right? But that act of kindness cracked something open in me. And then as we're watching the movie, what light is in it? And I know, thematically it seems dark on the surface, but I grew up in a house that was very much oppressed and or haunted, whatever words you want to use. And we lived there for 13 years, very much a part of my life. And as we're watching it, because of the crack that was made by the act of generosity, I don't know, I'm just open. I'm open spiritually in that moment. You know what I mean? It cracked me open. It kicked the door open. And so these memories are streaming, and they're coming back to me of what I experienced growing up. And it's like there's this reawakening in me of the reality of the fact that we live in an enchanted world, because I was really struggling with faith, period, at the time. Even though I just gotten back from preaching, I was struggling with belief of any kind. I was really sort of a functioning atheist in some way. But that awakened something in me because of the act of generosity. And then as it went on and on and on, and then even, I know it's not the true story. I know it isn't, but even the way that they did tell the story, fictitious though it was, it mapped right onto a lot of things that I was experiencing in that time of my life. And by the end of it, I was just like, I did not feel like I watched a horror movie. I felt like I went to church. I was
Yep.
like, I was just like, I was so moved by what I saw, coupled with the act of generosity. There are no words for it. I'm trying to write about it now, because I talked to you about this a couple months ago, but due to the busyness of my schedule,
Yeah.
it's been a little hectic, but I'm writing about it now, and about this and about how our connection came about, because that was that has stayed with me. That's how I knew you existed, right? And that's how, whenever it was we connected, however that came about, that's why to me it was so like, are you kidding me right now? Like, it was just like, how in the world does this happen? How am I now, a decade later, talking to you on a Friday night, about this story? It was an act of generosity on the part of two human beings who didn't know what I was going through. At least I don't think they did. It was just they felt to do it. And they had no idea in that moment how much it would mean to me. But it meant the world. And now today, I'm connected with you. I'm connected with all these other people that I'm connected to as a result of you.
Through me.
Because
Yeah.
of that moment. And I can tell this story now and encourage other people. Man, you don't know what people are going through. Those urges, those flashes, those senses you have of, give Andrea this glass with an owl painted on it, or invite the guy over for crockpot chicken and conjuring viewing, or give this guy the Red Lobster card, or put $20 in the offering plate and say, this is from the preacher from America who doesn't really need it, but still I feel to do it, or whatever. The small act of kindness, you have no idea what that can do to a person. You have no idea what doors that can open, how that can transform a person and set them on a path that they will never recover from in the best possible way. And that the world just might never recover from as a result. Like, you just don't know. When you extend kindness and compassion, you are partnering with your very source to manifest and bring to the surface the truest of all truths, the light that is sometimes buried beneath the Ouroboros cycle that we think is ultimate reality. When you partner, when you extend kindness and compassion and love, you separate the head from the tail, and you manifest the truth of all truths, which is at the heart of all things. There is love, there is generosity, there is kindness, there is goodness. At the heart of every human being, there is that same thing, because we are fractals of our source. And man, I'm getting fired up talking about that, but I'm going to shut up because I could talk all night.
It's our choice.
Yes.
It's like my answer to that question. How did you get through it? How are you on the other side of it?
Yeah.
I choose to live in the light.
Yeah.
When things got really crazy in that house, I know I've told you this personally. When things got crazy in that house and the negative energy was swirling and things were flying, and it was unnerving in the extreme, sometimes dangerous. 3 words stopped it every single time. 3 words. God help me. God help me. It was over. It was over.
Yeah.
Now, isn't God help me a prayer? God help me is a prayer.
Yeah.
It is a connection to source.
Yep.
It is a reaching out, a need, knowing there's something to reach out and connect with. And in that connection, in that bond, in that giving and in that accepting, and in that engagement and communication, 3 simple words. God help me.
Yeah.
How powerful are the 3 words? I love you. I believe you. Oh, Tom was there. Oh, it was, oh, honey. Well, we're going to do it again, okay? Because, I mean, if I'm brave enough to get on a fucking airplane in Atlanta, of all places, and go to Detroit, which is a piece of cake compared to Atlanta.
You ain't lying.
Yeah, and I will go again, and we will make sure that you can be there. My friend Tom Owen came, and, we met. I had him on as a guest on A World Awakening. Through my friend Erin, said, you got to meet Tom. You got to, get to know Tom. And then we have already expanded our circle has
Mhm.
expanded, and the circle has expanded, and the circle has expanded.
Mhm.
And that's what it's really all about,
Mhm.
is the touching of the ripples of the water from the pebble in the center that extends to the shore. That's what it's really all about.
Mhm.
Mean Bill, the producer, said we only have 5 minutes left, and that was about 3 minutes ago. I have enjoyed every moment with you tonight,
I have
and
too.
I love our viewers, our friends, our family that's out there that's joined us. And I hope that something that we said tonight touched their hearts as well, opened them up
Mhm.
to the possibilities that exist, because there are miracles everywhere,
Mhm.
omnipresent, surrounding us like spirit itself.
Yeah.
All we have to do is pay attention and have the grace to say thank you
Amen.
in whatever way we choose.
Mhm.
And so, with that, I will see you next week. We will do another episode of Soul School.
Mhm.
With all my heart, I love you so.
Same. Mm.
Always be the light you seek. Always be the beacon of hope. Always, always be the change you wish to see in the world. Good night, everybody. Class dismissed.
Peace.